In May 1962, the icon that was Marilyn Monroe took to the stage at Madison Square Gardens to sing Happy Birthday for President Kennedy. And that's the story that everybody knows, that's the big thing. There were many huge names there that night, including Maria Callas and of course Diane Carroll, big names, hosted by the brother-in-law, the British actor Peter Lawford. And famously he introduced Marilyn as the late Marilyn Monroe. This was the in-joke because Marilyn was always late for everything. But on that particular night, it was very important to her. But of course, people write many books about the Kennedys and Marilyn. A new one's looming now. What I wanted to share with you over a series of videos in the future is the stories that I was told about Marilyn Monroe and the Kennedys. And this just may change your perception. As ever, let me explain. Chums, nice to see you. Thank you so much for your time. As you know, I love the golden age of Hollywood. It's terrific, it's fun, and more importantly, we get to know things that we didn't know before. As I've often said here on the show, I've been lucky enough to spend time with people that literally were at the epicenter of this golden age. And one person that I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with was none other than Ricky Martin. He is the son of the legendary crooner Dean Martin. Now, for many people, of course, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis were the brilliant double act of the 50s and right through to the 60s, and they had a huge falling out. Many, of course, believe that Jerry Lewis was a very difficult person to deal with. I met him briefly in Damn Yankees in London, and I remember auditioning for that, and he was, shall we say, tricky, to say the least. Dean Martin had a lot more easygoing caliber about him. Very talented, very handsome, and just an outgoing personality. The one thing that he didn't like, though, were the Kennedys. People may be shocked by that. Now, his son, Ricky Martin, as I said, was a lovely man. Got to know him over a number of years, and he came into the studio and we did a wonderful sit-down interview. He was debonair, he smelt rich, know what I'm saying, chums? And the thing was, he just had all of these wonderful stories. He'd been the staff photographer working on his father's TV show throughout the time that it was a big rated hit. So he met every single person going. But of course, it was a conversation talking about Marilyn Monroe that really was interesting and fascinating to me. You see, Dean, in 1962, April, signed on to star in the 20th Century Fox movie, Something's Got to Give, Marilyn's final and unfinished movie. He basically played a man whose wife returned after 7 years, cast away, and it was a remake of the Irene Dunne Cary Grant movie, My Favourite Wife. Sid Charisse was also in the movie, and I met her later on also. Wonderful lady, beautiful, very classy, brilliant dancer, right? Now, this story has a wonderful twist to it in many respects, because as I said, the stories that you get in these books from people who never met these people, I can offer a different side to that. You see, when this young boy, Ricky Martin, was very young, I think about 11 at the time, he said that Marilyn used to come to Dean Martin's house on most evenings for a drink after work and basically talk through the movie. Marilyn didn't like the movie Something's Got to Give because originally written by Nunnally Johnson and then various writers, they kept changing the plot. George Cukor was a difficult director, even though he'd worked with her previously on things like Let's Make Love. She realised, Marilyn, coming up at 36, that this was a make or break movie. Her last two films, Let's Make Love with Frankie Vaughan, and of course The Misfits, written for her by her then husband, Arthur Miller, didn't really work at all. It wasn't the perception that they wanted. She was ridding of people in her life, including the acting coaches, the Strasbergs. She'd had enough. She figured the only way to get back on top would be to recreate the character that had made her famous in the first place, the sort of breathy blonde that everybody liked, but this time with an added sense of maturity. There was a new Marilyn too, according to Ricky, because she'd slimmed down and she decided that she was going to regain her crown from the likes of Jane Mansfield, Mamie Van Doren and Cherie North and all the other blondes that were knocking around. Her biggest rival, though, was this. That's right, Elizabeth Taylor. She picked up $1 million to portray Cleopatra in the Fox film, while Marilyn was simply getting $100,000. A lot of money, but not $1 million. And Marilyn thought she was more important. In order to look good at the stage in the Madison Square Garden, Marilyn had decided, as I say, to shift quite a lot of weight, including the fact that she'd also gone on this very extreme diet. And basically because she was taking amphetamines and sleeping pills, she didn't eat that much either. So she looked radically different from the sort of more rounded girl that we've seen of the last few years. This was achieved simply by living on chopped liver and dried toast and occasionally boiled eggs. This, she said, curbed her appetite, and that's how she regained her figure back. Now, what people don't know about that infamous Madison Square Garden appearance, where she breathily sang "Thanks for the memory" and "Happy birthday, Mr. President," well, it could have been totally different. You see, everybody remembers the glittering Jean-Louis gown that was described as virtually nude. Marilyn had other ideas. You see, she'd gone to the Fox people and basically said, look, we need to promote this movie and I'm going to be singing at the Kennedy, event, the birthday. This is what I suggest we do. They didn't want her to go because they felt the movie was behind and she was taking too much time. So they figured, no, we're not getting involved. Marilyn had other ideas, as one can imagine. A forceful character, people forget that. She didn't just create Marilyn Monroe, she was Marilyn Monroe, but not the character as Ricky told me behind the scenes. Very savvy, totally different in speaking voice, and very angry about the way that she'd been treated, not just by Hollywood, but of course at this point she realised where the Kennedy thing was going. No two ways about it. But she knew also appearing on the stage at Madison Square Garden in May 1962, she could put herself back on track. Everybody else behind the scenes at this big event were willing to give pre-show interviews. Marilyn wasn't, because she wanted her appearance to be spectacular. But before the agreement of the now famous Jean-Louis dress, Marilyn's real idea was to turn up literally in a bikini, carrying a beach ball and a towel, to recreate something of a scene of her forthcoming movie. Why she dressed like that? Oh, because she's a woman who's been lost for 7 years. She knew the absolute idea thing of marketing. But apparently her idea was scuppered by Peter Lawford and the rest of the people because they thought it would be tacky. As she pointed out, I'm not getting paid for this, so what's in it for me? And this was the exact words from Ricky Martin. The idea also was originally for Marilyn to include her co-star Dean Martin. But Dean didn't want anything to do with it. He wasn't interested. He'd rather go off and play golf. So what happened was she relented and said, okay, I'll come up with something spectacular. And that's where the Jean-Louis dress came in place. Now the story goes, and Ricky backed this up, that behind the scenes there were all sorts of things happening with President Kennedy and of course Marilyn. He says 100%, and this is from her, that nothing happened. But he also pointed out that Marilyn Monroe never told everything to everybody. She gave a snippet to that, a snippet to that. He also pointed out that she was never really best friends with her publicist, Pat Newcomb. She was simply a person working there. And Marilyn, according to that source, believed that Pat was also something of a spy from her, yes, Dr. Greenson. A real triangle of mess. Now what happened, as we know, she sang at that event, turned up late, and everything was going to be wonderful. She got back and was fined by Fox, literally for missing a day's filming. This was the day that she returned to do the infamous nude swim inside the Fox lot and the pool, where she disrobed and literally wiped away everybody from the front pages. This was her goal. And as she pointed out, coming out of the pool, you could have had this 2 days ago. This would have put us back literally on the front pages and the name of the movie. She even suggested that people should be lined up outside with placards saying Marilyn Monroe, something's got to give. They didn't want to know. So the story about Marilyn and being very difficult and, wanting to just fall into the arms of Kennedy, according to Ricky Martin, that was very much far from the truth. The other side of it was she just knew that he was the most powerful man in the world. And being associated with him, well, that was useful. But as Ricky overheard her speaking to his father in the lounge at their home, she said, he's an interesting man, but he's a bit childish. And also he's a little bit, and she basically wanted to say dull. But she knew that he was powerful, and that interested her. The fact that he was the President of the United States, and this woman, coming where she'd come from, was very exciting for her. As she pointed out, it's interesting, isn't it? I married the most famous baseball player in the world, Joe DiMaggio, and of course, the brilliant playwright Arthur Miller. Some say I could become the next First Lady, but I'm not quite sure it's what I want. Now, Ricky also pointed out to me that Jackie Kennedy, who he'd also met, was not this great, wonderful, kind, easygoing woman that people saw. And this is from a child, so children, should I say, remember this, don't they? They see it more. And he pointed out that she was very businesslike with President Kennedy, and there was very little warmth between the two. And he believed, as a young person and speaking to his father later, that's why Marilyn Monroe fitted very much in. She was attentive, glamorous, and laughed at his words and his jokes and made him feel rather special. By this point, Jackie Kennedy had literally thought, well, here we go. This is where we're at right now. Hence the reason she didn't want to turn up at the very special birthday party on May the 19th in 1962. And as Ricky pointed out, she knew by not turning up, that would raise eyebrows also. But on top of all of that, as he also pointed out, what was interesting for people around Marilyn is the fact that it looked like she'd driven Jackie Kennedy away, and that worked very much in her favour. So for those people that thought they knew the inside track on this big event at Madison Square Garden, that's some things that you probably didn't know. And according to Ricky Martin, he said 100%, Marilyn Monroe was never truly interested in Jack Kennedy. She had a softer spot for Bobby Kennedy. And in the next installment, I'll tell you exactly how that developed and his thoughts and his memories upon meeting him and Marilyn. Neil Sean, Kensington, London.